Franklin Roosevelt said, after the Dust Bowl of the 1930s or 40s, they said that a country that destroys its soil destroys itself. And that's a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So we have to, and I thought to myself, I said, well, that's pretty interesting. And there's even different passages in the Bible and everything else about how important our soil is, And I said, well, if we're going to continue for generations and generations to be able to grow our own food and do that, we have to figure out, how we stop losing it. We're losing soil on a massive rate.
Just get ahead of these problems like you're talking about.
Well, you have to figure out what you want to do is put back in the soil what you're losing through the process of farming. It just should be a natural cycle that just goes around and around. And
why do we lose that, David? Because you work with all these growers, isn't that obvious?
I think that you go back to the chemical companies when petroleum was discovered in the early 1900s. Things changed in this world, changed dramatically. It created, the only good thing, I think one of the good things was we stopped killing whales for oil back then. But
we're using petroleum fertilizers, change agriculture.
Well, that was a big breakthrough. Before, we had a lot of difficulty in nitrogen came pretty much from Chile and in Peru, where they had the Chilean nitrate, calcium nitrate, or saltpeter that they would get, which would be used as a nitrogen. So that was the big industry that they would get to sell to farmers. And then when we discovered the way to crack and produce ammonium nitrate, it changed everything, and it just ramped it up. And they were doing that with the low cost of fossil fuels. They were able to create the ammonium nitrate, and so
which is just, by the way, for it's bioavailable. For the plant, so it's instant.
Well, that's right.
Steroids for that.
Well, yeah, because if plants in nature, everybody looks around you. You have plants everywhere, that are growing, that aren't in your yard, that aren't in a garden, that are growing naturally. Redwood trees are massive and huge and have never been fed an ounce of nitrogen, And so that you always have to ask yourself, well, how does this happen in nature that all these plants are able to grow to this huge extent and not have people pouring nitrogen on them? And so I think that everything propagates itself, and so when people got we get addicted to certain things, and when we found out that we could get it to grow faster. But the biggest problem with ammonium nitrates and synthetic fertilizers is that they tap down the natural biology in the soil, so that they basically create more of a dependency upon the synthetic fertilizers, instead of the plant having to go and get it from the soil. You know what I mean? Because it's just being
weaker soil biome.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they get that, and then they become dependent on it because now they don't have to put out roots. They don't have to put those roots out, those deep roots, and that hampers them because then when they go into a drought, they didn't put the roots out that they needed to get the water or hold more water. So they become less drought tolerant and everything else. So I think that's the, it's always what I call a domino effect. You know what I mean? It's just like this caused this to happen, it caused this to happen, So just on the same side of that, if we have a positive domino, you know what I mean, that we do this, we sequester carbon, we put nutrients back into the soil, we get this, and we end up with clean water. We do it the other way, we end up with dirty water, we'd end up with dirty environment. This way we end up with a clean environment, clean water, and everything else. So it's just which way you're going to do it, and I think I think we're at a tipping point now in that people are realizing it. There's so many people that are into putting gardens in their own homes, as you do, and that people are relatively unknowledgeable about the importance of soil and soil and sequestration. About carbon sequesters more CO out of our atmosphere than probably any other way.
We're in the garden.